Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. And today I'll be going over something very important in e-commerce not a lot of people talk about, and that's your payment processor. If you don't have a good structure, you could actually kill your cash flow, and it can actually affect your brand, right? You could kill it. So this video is not going to be for beginners. This is going to be for people who are actually doing a couple thousand a day. You know, if you're a beginner, it wouldn't really make sense for you. I would just recommend sticking to Shopify payment. But if you're someone who's scaling, who's been doing it for a while, and you know you're noticing chargeback rates increasing or reserves coming in from Shopify, then this will help you out, and hopefully maybe you could do something about it. You know, the thing about payment processes, a lot of people ignore it, right? They just stick to Shopify and, you know, scale with it until shit happens. Obviously, if you're in the supplement niche, this is going to be more important for you. If you're doing white hat products, then you know you'll be fine with Shopify payment. You can scale it. You don't have really any issues. But as far as like someone who's doing supplements, right? What happens is recurring subscriptions, people always charge back, right? They'll be like, oh, I didn't order this. Stuff like that happens. It's pretty common in the supplement niche. So, you know, scaling specifically with Shopify, you know, you could potentially be getting hit with chargeback. You could be potentially being hit with obviously reserves, and even, you know, they could even take your payment processor away if you look like you're a high risk for them. And the thing is, it's all different for every brand, every product, every person is different, right? You get hit with 20%, you get hit with 15%, you get hit with 30%. So if you don't have cash flow, right, and you're really reinvesting everything back and your margins are low, it could really burn you a lot of money if you don't have a good structure. So obviously the point of these reserves is for against disputes, chargebacks, refunds, right? Any other risk that Shopify sees, right? That's where the funds will really be used for. Or any other payment processor that you have that can also have, you know, reserves, because every other payment processor could have it. It's not just Shopify specifically, but recently Shopify has been way more aggressive than it was like a year ago. They let things fly by easily, right? From what I've seen, your shipping times can affect it. Your fulfillment type could affect it. You know, if it's coming from China, or if you see high warning, you know, on some of your orders, you might see like high risk orders or high warning or medium risk. Apparently those are actually a factor where you could get hit with reserves. Any of these are, you know, it's possible. Anything can happen. You know, it can happen in the first week, it can happen in the first month, or it can happen in 3 months. That really depends on how Shopify is feeling about your brand. There is no way, right? It's the end of the day, they're AI that picks it up, and sometimes it's random. You get picked. You know, we've had a brand where in 2 weeks they took away our payment processor, and it was completely compliant too. That's the crazy part, and it just happened, right? Anything can happen. So pretty much, as you guys can see here, 2 of my recent brands, we got hit with reserves. One of them was on, I think it was like March. They were both on March, actually. Yeah, they were both March. Right, they hit me reserve. One of them is on 30%, right? 30% is a crazy amount if you don't have cash flow coming in, and the other one is 20%, right? So these are things that can happen in, you know, ecom, right? Especially supplements and subscriptions. All these things are very aggressive, and you will be higher likely to have chargebacks than it's white hat. So as you can see, 2 brands of mine that did get hit literally 2 months ago, and then apparently next month is when the reserves actually do get taken off, which they could still be like, hey, you know, actually we're not going to take it away. Your chargeback is still high. Even at, you know, what I've seen this year recently is like other people is that Shopify specifically has taken away their payment processor 2 weeks into scaling, even 0.5% chargeback rate. They've been given reserves. So anything is possible, right? Anything is possible in this game. So you guys got to be ready and diversify. So the important thing is to understand that reserves do not mean your brand has to stop running ads, right? What it means is you just got to diversify into other payment processors. The reason why you want to do this is obviously to stay away from having the, you know, the huge 20%, 30% reserve, so you can reinvest that back into your business, right? You don't want to have 20% sitting there for over 3-4 months when you can reinvest it in the business, right? You guys can see that if you're someone who's spending a lot of money on ads, let's say your profit margin is 20%, right? You're sitting at 20 to 25% or even 30%. And you know, you're spending pretty heavily on ads, you're starting to scale up, you got, you know, custom inventory coming in, you got salaries to pay, you got other things to pay, you know, you got your ads, you got the supplier to pay, right? And then you get hit with the 30% reserve. So basically any profit or any profitability you had is literally just gone into like a savings account, right? That's what you can imagine, a savings account. But now you're stopping yourself from scaling, because if you do scale, now it's eating inside of your actual pocket, right? Because there's money sitting there that you can't touch. Unfortunately, Shopify won't just be like, you know what, I'll give it to you. Unless you have some connect and whatnot, depending on how much you're scaling. But most cases, right, I'm talking to the average person or average brand owner, they're going to be stuck with the reserve. To be clear, Shopify payment process is very convenient, right? Compared to any other payment processor. It's like, put your information in, you're collecting payments, right? For a lot of brand owners, right, especially early on, it makes sense, right? It makes sense to do this instead of like getting mids, and I'll break down more into this video, but instead of actually going through that whole entire process, or you sign it up, get it, start running ads, and start getting paid out, and scale it up, right? But once you're doing consistent volume, that's when the inconvenience comes in. So that's when you start, thinking about other methods where you have to actually start incorporating different payment processors. I just want to be clear, right? So this isn't about hiding anything, like hiding bad behavior, right? You still want to be good standards. It's just third-party payment processor mids are a bit less, aggressive as to Shopify, right? That doesn't mean go ahead and do black hat, right? Don't go ahead and do like no ships and stuff like that. Don't do that, right? That's still not obviously ethical. That's not even a brand, right? You're just scamming people. So you still want to have number one, you still want to have good customer support. You want to have really good shipping times. You want to be really good at responding to, dispute preventing processor, right? There's Disputify, right? You still want to have all these things enabled. But this is just more for if you got hit with the reserve, or you're worried about getting hit with the reserve, then start expanding to different payment processors. So if one mid or one payment processor gets hit, right, the other ones are still fine. You're not being held on cash flow. This is why you're probably seeing brands use, different checkouts, right? As you can see, like some brands may have like buy dot. Right, for example, let's look at Rosabella's website. As you can see, get.try Rosabella, right? This is different from their main website, right? Just Rosabella. So if you just go here. So you can see this is different, right? This is obviously Shopify payment processor, their regular website. So if you just go to add a cart, thank you. And then continue checkout. Right, this is a regular Shopify, right? Same as subscription total, as you guys can see. This is obviously they're using Shopify Plus to change this. They're kind of hiding recurring. As you can see, right, this is Shopify. This is regular Shopify, right? Now, if you go back, this is not on Shopify. This is on a different payment processor. So the checkouts are different, right? So as you see, they're using different payment processor to make this transaction. They're diversifying their checkouts because, maybe they've been hit with Shopify Reserve. They have another one in case to, diversify their money, basically. So that's why you guys might see like some brands have get dot in the beginning, because it's just, different. And obviously one of the reasons why people do this is that when they use different payment processors, your checkout is much more customizable, right? As you saw, you can have like, reviews here, you can hide certain things. I'm not going to get into it, but, you could put disclaimers compared to other ones, right? You can have like your offers, different offers here. It's more customizable, right? Compared to Shopify, where you're kind of locked in unless you get Shopify Plus, and you're still kind of locked. Again, the point is to diversify when you start scaling, so you're not stuck with one payment processor. All right, to all my visual learners, I'll be demonstrating this on my iPad, maybe clear some things up. So basically how this whole structure works is, right, you have your brand, right? You're at the top. And then if you go down, it's your ISO. So ISO is your payment partner. These are people who are going to give you the mids. We have Connect. So if you're someone who's looking to actually start the structure, I would definitely book a call below in the description, and we can help you out, connect you with the right people. So you won't have any issues in the long term, right? So these are your payment partners. So these guys connect you to your mids, right? If you have multiple mids. So, let's say this is mid 1, mid 2, and then mid 3, right? This is your mids. They help you connect with them. And basically what happens is, depending on how long your brand is, how much revenue you've done, what your cash flow looks like, all these do matter. But I'm just going to speak numbers here just so you can have an idea, right? Mid 1 could give you 40K. So they could give you 40K. These guys could give you 100K, right? 200K. So in total, right, with mids, you can collect 340K a month in revenue. And obviously some mids where even if you start off, they could give you reserves. But the thing is with mids or specifically with working with payment partners and these banks is they're easier to negotiate because they're small, right? If they see some good results coming in, your chargebacks are low, right? They're gonna work with you. They can take away the reserves. They could take away, and they can increase your limits. They can, help you out even more down the line. It's just anything's possible. That's the thing about mids, right? They're much easier to negotiate with because you're working with underwriters. So pretty much that's what it looks like. And the thing about mids is that these work together, right? When you have 3 mids, you connect them to what's called a CRM, right? And what we use is Phoenix. And basically what Phoenix does is collects all these mids together. And let's say like mid 1 fails, right? With the transaction of a customer. Let's say customer purchased it, mid 1 say decline, right? It'll try mid 2 and mid 3 too. So like there's a potential where maybe that specific bank didn't approve it, but the other banks will approve the customer on that purchase. So that's the good thing about having multiple mids too, is if one fails, at least the other ones can help, try to get the purchase. And if they all fail, well, it's the customer's fault, right? Unfortunately, that's the thing about using mids versus Shopify payment is Shopify payments has a big pool, so their approvals are going to be higher, but obviously you have the cons where they could take it away and whatnot. And the good thing with having mids and Shopify is you can have both, right? That's the good thing about this is you could still be collecting payments from Shopify and also from mids. You're just diversifying it, so like if one gets hit, you still have other ways to collect and have cash flow still coming in. So that's the point of having this type of structure, right? And then CRM, basically that's where you use Phoenix, right? That's where it's all connected to, and that's where you're pretty much having like the back end, like let's say the checkout, how it looks, right? Everything could be done through the CRM, right? And then the next thing is your processor, right? The trails and whatnot, right? On approvals and denials. And then it's obviously going to be the bank. And then from the bank, right? It's your payout. So pretty straightforward, right? ISO is your payment partners, which you have connects if you need it, right? Then it goes to your mids, which then they get the mids for you. So let's say you have 3 mids. And then it gets connected to a CRM. We use Phoenix. There's other ones too available, which basically sets up the checkout at the back end. They connect the domain, like the get.domain that I showed you earlier. And then it goes to the processor, that's the approvals, the denials, and then the bank, and then the payout. So pretty much that's really how it visually looks, right? Obviously with Shopify, you're more like this. So it's just, you got your brand, it just goes to Shopify. They handle pretty much everything else, and then it's just, payout. So it's a good thing to have all these, right? I would definitely recommend having both. There's nothing wrong with it. But I hope this video helped you guys out. If you have any other questions, let me know in the description. If you have any other video ideas, guys, let me know and I'll make it. But other than that, hope to see you guys in the next video, and peace.